Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. Today I am here with a bit of a mid-year update on my palettes. I wanted to share with you all of the palettes that I have not reached for yet this year, and now when we've gone past halfway of the point of the year, I thought I would check in and have a bit of a reality check and see what palettes I have not reached for this year. This doesn't necessarily mean that these are like my least favorite palettes or anything like that, because I'm doing my big fat eyeshadow project, which means that I'm reaching for all of my palettes as a whole this year, and not kind of, reaching for my favorite palettes or rolling in whatever I wanted to. I guess I am choosing the palettes, but I'm kind of choosing them by season rather than like my favorites. So some of my favorite palettes are definitely still on the list, but I would share with you anyway how many palettes I have left to reach for and kind of where I'm standing at the moment. So before I jump into the video, if you're new here, please consider subscribing. I would love to have you in the family. Let's jump into the video. So we're going to start off with Anastasia, and I have two palettes from Anastasia that I have not reached for yet, which makes sense because both of these are more kind of wintry autumnal palettes. The first palette is definitely a winter palette. This is the Sultry palette, which is one that I think I'm going to reach for a lot in like December or like end of the year when we get into the colder months. I'm definitely going to roll this into my big fat eyeshadow project in December, and I know that I'm going to get use out of it then, but I'm not sure if I'm going to reach for it before that point, just because I am planning a lot of other things. So I kind of have to prioritize things that are in projects, either my Pandos eyeshadows, my Pro Develop, my big fat eyeshadow project, or any other project where I roll them in. And yes, I do love this palette, and I'm sad that I neglected it so far this year. But yeah, I haven't reached for this one yet, which again kind of checks out just because of the color story. Then the next palette is one that I'm very, very excited to reach for. That is the Subculture palette, which actually doesn't look like the Subculture palette. Now I'm just opening up. It looks so stunning. It looks like this. I will also insert some footage. But this is actually a mix between the Subculture palette and the Jackie Aina palette. And I kept all my favorite shades. And it created this perfect autumnal color story. And I'm in love with this palette. I really, really do love it. I am a bit sad that I haven't reached for it yet, but again, I am waiting for this one to get rolled into my big fat eyeshadow project. And also, again, this color story is very autumnal, so I haven't really wanted to reach for it yet, but I'm dying to reach for this one now when we're getting into, well, not quite into autumn yet, but when we get to like September time, September, October, I probably want to reach for this palette. So it's definitely one that I'm going to reach for quite a lot around that time of the year. The next palette is one that I'm going to reach for very, very soon, because this one I just rolled into my big fat eyeshadow project for the month of August. So I'm going to reach for this one this month, and that is the Natasha Nona bronze palette. This is a beautiful, beautiful kind of warm toned summery palette. I absolutely love this one. I got this as a gift from my boyfriend for my birthday, and I'm just in love with this color story. I feel like it is so rich, so like just, I don't know, it's warm, and I can't describe it, but these colors just make me happy, and I love wearing them as well. I don't really go for warm tone looks very often anymore, but this is just, it's just something about this palette that I absolutely adore. And yeah, I'm a bit sad that I haven't reached for this one yet this year, because I do love it so much. But again, I'm going to reach for this one in the month of August, so I'm definitely going to show it some love in the next coming weeks. Another palette that I'm really, really sad that I have not reached for yet this year is actually one of my favorites again, and that's another Natasha Nona palette. This is the Biba palette. This is a beautiful kind of staple palette with a lot of different mattes and a couple of shimmers too, but it's mainly mattes. I would have reached for this one so much if I didn't do so many eyeshadow projects, because this is just like, again, a no-brainer palette. I can reach for this one if I want to go for my indie shadows. If I want to reach for like my special sparkly shades, I would pull this palette out to have as like a companion palette to do all of my mattes. And no matter what kind of indie shadow I would reach for, if I was going for more of a neutral look, this palette would have everything that I need, which is again why I love it so much. Also, the quality is absolutely amazing. So I'm a bit sad that I haven't reached for this one yet, but I know exactly why, and that's because I'm doing my big fat eyeshadow project, because that takes up so much of my time. And then, I'm also planning my palette. I'm also planning other shades. So I just have to prioritize those things rather than just reaching for palettes because I enjoy them, which is a bit sad. And I'm looking forward to next year when I can reach for my palettes a little bit as I want, and also kind of, I don't know, declutter some of my least favorite palettes as well at the end of the year. As you know, I'm going to do that too. And I think my goal is to declutter like 5 palettes minimum. If I can get to 10, that would be amazing, but it's probably going to be around 5, we'll see. So when I kind of whittle down my collection a little bit, I'm sure that I can reach for favorites like this quite a bit more. The next palette that I have not really reached for, I still have in the box, and that is the Yucca palette from Natasha Denona. This is my newest palette. I got this one as a belated birthday present from my friend. She got this one for my birthday last year when I turned 30, but we actually didn't see each other for ages just because I think I had to cancel, and then she had to cancel, and then she had a baby, and then she had to take care of the baby, and then we finally met up couple months ago. I think we met up in May. No, I think it was June, and she gave me this palette right here. So this is the Yucca palette, like I said, and this is a beautiful kind of warm toned green color story, and I'm so excited. I haven't reached for it yet, but I'm so excited to do so. I actually staring at it now. I haven't properly swatched this palette yet, so I'm excited to do so because I will do that for the kind of B-roll footage of this video. And yeah, I'm really excited because this has so many shades that I absolutely love. I love these kind of warm yellow tone greens. So we'll see what kind of looks I can make with this palette. I'm sure that I can make a lot of different looks, and it's nice as well because this is more of a kind of colorful but slightly muted colorful palette, which is right up my alley right now because I don't go for colorful looks very often, and when I do, they're a bit more muted. Like even today, I have a colorful look on, but they're a bit more pastel. So yeah, I'm excited to reach for this palette, and I haven't done so yet, but I'm kind of again holding out to reach for this one in autumn because for me this is, I mean, I was gonna say this is an autumnal palette, but I feel like this would work in spring too. But yeah, I'm definitely gonna roll this one into my Big Fat Eyeshadow project very soon. I think I might even do it in September, and then I will get some use out of this palette. The last like full size Natasha Denona palette that I have is this one right here, which is the Glam Face palette in the shade Light, and this one I got end of last year from my boyfriend for my birthday as well. And I absolutely love this palette. I am so happy to have it in my collection, but I haven't reached for it yet this year. It's definitely one that I want to reach for more, and I feel like this actually, you know what, I might actually bring this one with me to Sweden. It's not one of my Big Fat Eyeshadow project palettes though. I feel like this would be such a good one, but I need to reach for a pan palette. I'm kind of just making decisions as I go, but anyway, I love this palette, and it's a good kind of travel palette because you have like everything you need in here apart from like a bronzer for your colored face products. And the shimmers in here are absolutely stunning. They're super sparkly, and the mattes are exactly the type of mattes that I like. This is a beautiful palette, and I haven't reached for it as much as I would have liked to, but it is quite new to my collection too. It's less than a year old, and again, I'm going to sound like a broken record, but I'm sure I will get more use out of this one once I finish up my Big Fat Eyeshadow project. Then the last couple of palettes that I have from Natasha Denona are both mini palettes. We have two of them that I have not reached for yet this year. We have the gold palette, mini gold palette, which is a beautiful color story. This is also like a green gold kind of color story, and I absolutely love this one. This one has a lot of love because this one was my product level up level 5 palette end of last year. So I showed it a lot of love at that point. I actually have pan on all of the 5 shades. So looking at this one, it's one of my like most loved palettes. It's because I have pan on all the shades, and it's quite a lot of use as well. It's not just like a you know, distinct dip and then a pan. Like I have a decent amount of use on some of these, but I love this palette, and I'm excited to reach for this one again. I feel again like this is more of an autumnal palette for me, so I haven't rolled it into a project yet to use. I'm not too worried about this one specifically because I did show this one so much love last year, but overall it is a beautiful color story, and I'm excited to reach for this one again soon. I feel like I didn't get tired of it, but it's kind of like a cool down from it a little bit, and I'm very excited to reach for this one again. And I'm probably going to roll it into my Big Fat Eyeshadow project around, I don't know, September, October time, probably October, we'll see. But yeah, very excited to reach for this one soon. And then the second one that is a mini palette from Natasha Denona is the Mini Biba palette. This one is, to be fair, quite a summery tone palette, so maybe I should have reached for this one early in the year. But I just have so many palettes to reach for that project that this one just wasn't one of them yet. It is a beautiful color story. It only has 1 shimmer and then 4 mattes, and I do like it. It's not my favorite Natasha Denona mini palette, which is probably also why I haven't rolled into a project yet. But I'm excited to see what looks I can make with this palette and what kind of use I can get of it and rank it within that project, because yeah, I'm not really sure how I feel about this one. I do think it's a beautiful color story, but I know that I don't like this one as much as the other mini palettes. But so far this year, I have not had a chance to reach for this one yet. So next brand we have to talk about is Pat McGrath, and I have 4 Pat McGrath palettes that I have not reached for yet this year. The first one is this one here. They're all going to look the same on the outside, but this is the Utopian Dreams palette. This is my favorite. This is my first Pat McGrath palette, and I absolutely love this one. So it's a shame that I haven't reached for it yet. because again, it is my favorite. I am, however, going to reach for this one in the month of August. This is one of my Big Fat Eyeshadow Project palettes, so I'm very, very excited to get some use of this one and create 3 looks with this palette, and just in general reach for it whenever I want to, because like I said, this is one of my favorite palettes. So I do feel very, very sad that I haven't reached for this one yet, and again, it comes back to the projects that I'm doing, and I don't have the freedom to reach for palettes the way I do, like, or the way I want to, if I do want to make good progress on my palette, and if I want to stick with like my Big Fat Eyeshadow project and stuff like that. So it is a bit of a shame, but I absolutely love this palette, and me not using it has nothing to do with this palette not being a favorite. I do believe this one actually won my palette battle, if you watched that series. So I do love this one a lot. I just, again, haven't had a chance to reach for it this year so far. The next Pat McGrath palette that we have is the Divine Rose 1 palette, and this is also more of a winter tone palette. And yes, I could have reached for this one in January, but I didn't get a chance to at that point because I was working on other things. So this is definitely a palette that I'm going to reach for more when we get into the cooler months again, so maybe around like, you know, November, December time. I'm definitely going to roll this one into my Big Fat Eyeshadow project and reach for it then. But similar to a lot of other things, I just haven't had a chance to reach for this palette yet, which is of course sad. Like, me not reaching for majority of these palettes are very, very sad, especially my high-end palettes like this, because I should really get more use out of them. But I just, again, I'm going to sound like a broken record, I have too many projects going on. So even though I'm enjoying this project and I'm enjoying, like, you know, getting more use out of my palettes as they are and doing looks with them, that is really fun, and it's something that I haven't done for years. I am excited when this year is going to be up and I can do new things next year, and again, hopefully get some more use out of my palettes. Used again whenever I want to. The third Pat McGrath palette that I haven't reached for this year is actually my least favorite out of all of the ones I own. So in a way that kind of makes sense, but it's also because I haven't reached for this one in any of my projects yet. And that is the Divine Rose 2 palette. It is a nice color story, but again, it is not my favorite. Again, I haven't rolled this into a project. It is one that, you know, if I had to declutter one, I think I posted that video already, but if I had to declutter one of my palettes from Pat McGrath, this one would be it. But it doesn't mean that I will, because I do still like it, and I feel like there's a lot of this palette that I really do adore still. But overall, I'm not as sad not having to reach for this palette, because again, it's not a favorite. So I would probably prioritize reaching for some of my favorite palettes rather than this one, if I just had a chance to reach for like whatever I wanted rather than what I'm product panning. Then the final palette that I have not reached for from Pat McGrath is this one right here, which you can't see of course from the outside, but this is the Moonlit Seduction palette, which looks like this. Same with this one as some of the other things that I've talked about. This is just an autumnal winter palette for me, which is why I haven't got a chance to reach for it yet. It is a beautiful color story, and I'm excited to reach for this one more because I haven't played with this palette too much since I got it into my collection. So again, I'm excited to do 3 looks with it, get to know it better, and see how I actually feel about it. It's because I feel like I love this palette more than I originally thought I would. This is a palette that I wasn't originally going to pick up, but I got it very, very discounted from my friend, so I am happy to have it, and I feel like I like it more than I originally thought I would. So reaching for it again this year would be amazing, so that I can kind of, you know, solidify my feelings about this palette. So this is another one that I'm really looking forward to reaching for at some point this year. So the rest of the palettes are kind of like miscellaneous brands, so we're gonna go through them. And the first palette we have is this one from Charlotte Tilbury. This is the Exaggerate Bigger Brighter Eyes filter, and this is a beautiful little quad. I haven't reached for this one as enough in general in my collection, because I used to forget about these smaller palettes, and it is stunning. It's an easy no-brainer palette, but I also go for more kind of impactful looks, so it isn't a favorite, but I'm excited again to reach for it more because I want to get to know it. This is not one that's going to be featured into my Big Fat Eyeshadow project though, because I don't include quads in there, so you just need to make sure to make a mental note and reach for this one on my own time. Otherwise, I'll definitely neglect this palette this year. So into my brain for a mental note to reach for this one, maybe in a project or just in my own time. We have a very large palette next, and that is the Wilderness palette from Beauty Bay. This is a palette that I really like. It's one of my more kind of colorful palettes now in my collection. I don't have as many colorful palettes left, but this is definitely one of them. It is, however, more, in my eyes, more of an kind of autumnal palette, even though there is a lot of other shades, and there is also a lot of versatility. Again, I just haven't reached for this one in any project yet, which is why I haven't gotten around to reaching for this one. But I'm excited to make 3 looks with this palette because there's going to be so many kind of options and opportunities with this one, just because of the color story. There's so much you can do with it. So I'm excited to reach for this one whenever I get to this palette. We have another palette that I have not reached for yet, but I will reach for in August because I did roll this one into my eyeshadow project, and that is the Club Nebula palette. So this is one that I absolutely adore. It was limited edition. It is a collaboration with Angelica Nyqvist. It's a beautiful, beautiful palette, and I absolutely adore this one. It has some kind of colorful mattes, but a lot of them are really deep, but they're still colorful. And then the shimmers are absolutely spectacular, and I just really love this palette. It's one of my first ever indie palettes with like sparkly shades and things like that, and it has a very special place in my heart. I'm so happy that I picked this one up. I remember when I first, when this was first launched, I started to get it, but it was out of stock, and I got up in the middle of the night and I didn't get it in time, and I remember just crying. I think it was like, I don't know, 3, 4 a.m., something like that, and I started crying, and I woke my boyfriend up, and I was so upset because I missed out on this one, but then it was restocked, and I picked it up then, and again, I'm still so happy that I did. It's a very, very lovely palette, and I'm a bit sad that I haven't reached for it yet this year, but I will get around to that this month, and hopefully make some amazing looks with this palette. We have an Odin's Eye palette next, and this is the only one that I have not reached for, and this is also a newer palette for me. I picked this one up in end of last year, so November, December time, and that is the Snow Dream palette from the Christmas releases. This is a beautiful color story. I'm very, very excited to reach for this one. This is actually a palette that I haven't reached for at all in my collection. This one and the Yucca palette are the only two palettes that I have not reached for at all. So I'm excited whenever I do get around to this one. It is one that I'm kind of waiting to roll into a project, and then I can do looks with it. I'm waiting, like, mainly my Big Fat Eyeshadow project, because then I can use this one exclusively and see how I really feel about it. But just looking at the color story, I think I'm going to absolutely love this palette. And also, a lot of these shades are very, very special. A couple of them were featured in my, what's it called? My favorite eyeshadows from A to Z. I included some of these as like runner-ups and stuff like that. And I absolutely adore this palette. Just looking at it and swatching it out. So I'm very excited to get to this one at some point. I just haven't done so yet. Alright, so we have 5 more palettes to go. The next palette is my Mountain Trail palette from Sydney Grace. Similar to a lot of other palettes, this one is used a bit more autumnal to me, which is why I haven't gotten around to reaching for this yet. Also, I'm not really as into these green tones as I normally is this year. I feel like I switched my makeup focus, and I am more into like soft romantic tones, even though I'm wearing greens today. But normally I haven't been reaching for these tones as much, which I guess is also one of the reasons why I haven't gravitated towards this palette. But I am excited to reach for this one soon in my Big Fat Eyeshadow project and make some nice looks with this palette. A palette that I'm on the fence about is this one right here, which is the Eternal Eclipse palette from Luna Beauty. I feel like this is a palette that is a bit deep for me. It's not like my favorite type of color story. However, I do absolutely adore the formula of the mattes in this palette, and also some of the shades are very unique and special. So I haven't reached for this palette yet, but I think again this is one I'm going to reach for when we get into like the colder months, just because of the color story. And when I do, I'm excited to see how I like this palette, because it is one that is kind of on the shopping block, and depending on how I like the looks that I make with this palette is going to really like determine if I want to keep it or declutter it. So yeah, we'll see about this palette, but I haven't reached for it yet this year, but I'm excited to do so soon. Not necessarily because I love this palette, but because I'm excited to see if I do, and kind of how I feel about this palette in general. The kind of last, I guess, full-size palette that we have is this one right here, which is the Nabla Dreamy palette. I feel about this one very, very similarly how I feel about the Eternal Eclipse palette. I'm not really sure how I feel about this palette. It's a beautiful color story, and it's one that I lusted after for a while, but I feel like the shimmers are just a bit satiny, and I don't know, I'm just not sure how I feel about it. I feel like this could create some really nice everyday looks, but I also feel like I have these colors over and over in my collection. So I'm excited to reach for this one at some point in my Big Fat Eyeshadow project, make my 3 looks, rank it, and see how I feel about this one. And again, it is one that is potentially on the shopping block. We'll see how I go, but for now, I don't really know how I feel about this. So that's probably one of the reasons, again, why I haven't reached for it, because I'm not very drawn to it. So I haven't, wanted to reach for this one in my eyeshadow projects. I actually lied earlier. I said I had 5 palettes left, but I had 6 because this one was hiding, and this is also like, even though it's small, it is kind of like a full-size eyeshadow palette. And this is the Viseart Paris Edit palette. This is a really, really stunning palette. I don't reach for this one enough, but I feel like it's also because it's so small. So similar to the quads, even though this one has 12 shades, I just kind of neglect it because I forget about it. But overall, it is a beautiful color story. It's more of a kind of pinky mauve tone color story, and yes, I am into those romantic tones at the moment, but this is a little bit more kind of cool tone leaning overall. And you know, that doesn't mean I don't like it, because I do really like this palette, but it is also one that I haven't reached for too much in my collection. I got this one last year, so I want to give it some more love and see how I really feel about it. So I'm excited to play around with this one at some point this year to again make those pretty looks. But compared to the other palettes I just talked about, this is not one that I think is on the shopping block. So yeah, I'm just excited to play around with it and get a better feel of it. But I do believe this one is going to stay in my collection because I do really like it so far. And again, I just haven't had a chance to reach for this one specifically. Then the last two palettes I'm going to talk about together because they're very similar, and those are my Rowan quads. So we have the 75-degree quad, which is the one I had first. It looks like this, which has 4 kind of their creamy kind of special shades. Beautiful color story. And then we have the Eyes on Me quad, which is one that I got in my advent calendar end of last year. So I got this one in December. And this one looks like this. It's more kind of rusty shades. It has a matte as well, but these are kind of more like rustier tones. So both of these I have not reached for yet. I do want to reach for them more though, because I'm a bit kind of on the fence about the Rowan formula. I do think it's nice, but I just need to see if it's for me and like how I actually feel about it. The problem with these two is that since they are quads, I'm not going to reach for these in my Big Fat Eyeshadow project. So I used to have to put these into a project to get to know better. So I'm going to put the mental note again to put these into a project at some point. Maybe something like my deck of panning. I can roll these ones in for a prompt and get some use out of them. Maybe reach for them like a specific amount of time and see how I actually love these palettes or how I like them. Actually, I could even roll this one into my part-time uses. We'll see, but I do really need to reach for these palettes more to get a better idea of them, because right now I'm not really sure how I feel about them. So there you go, guys. There you have it. Those were all of the palettes that I have not reached for yet this year. And I did do some maths earlier. I did calculate, and that is 22 palettes that I have not reached for yet this year out of my 56 palettes, which is 39.29%. that I have not yet reached for this year. Palette wise, obviously some of the palettes that I have only reached for like a couple shades, but these are the palettes that I have not touched at all. And if you're looking at the year, just to kind of see where we are at the point of the year, we have currently gone through 59.56% of the year, which means that we have 40.44% left, which means that at least we are slightly higher than the percentage that I have. So again, we have 40.44% left, so 40.5%-ish left of the year, and I have 39.29% of my palette left to reach for. So at least that's kind of on track, which is good to see. But that is going to be it for this video today. I really hope you enjoyed it. Let me know if you have any untouched palette this year and how you kind of go about managing your usage. Do you track it? Do you just reach for whatever you want to, whenever you want to? I obviously track my uses for my projects, but yeah, it's quite nice. It's quite refreshing to track my project progress, not just like the palettes I use and which shades I use, but also how often I reach for my palettes. So that's very, very interesting to see. I think I will do a video at the end of the year, kind of with my most used palettes usage-wise, but also like maybe most used shades, things like that. But for now, this is kind of the palettes that I need to focus a bit more on this year and get some use out of. But I hope you guys are having an amazing day wherever you are, and I will catch you in my next one. Bye, guys.